How's it going, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar today from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And I have with me Cara O'Neill. How are you, Cara?
Hello, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. I know this has been a long time coming, so I appreciate the time, seriously. And Cara is the Vice President of Marketing at Dark Horse Comics, correct?
That is correct. And yes, thank you for bearing with my schedule. It is pretty crazy. We are very busy all of the time, but we all work often with you on book reviews. So I'm happy that we were able to make this come together.
It is my absolute pleasure. I love Dark Horse and have for a very long time, so it's amazing to get to talk about these books. It's amazing to work with your team to get creator interviews and also even get advance notice of some of the books that are coming out. So what is it that you do over there? What does that title mean?
It's honestly such a big question.
Okay.
We can dive into anything that I touch on that you're interested in, frankly. But so marketing in publishing is a bit different than marketing for other types of companies, I would say. I really enjoy what I do. It can be very creative. Basically, I would also kind of sum it up more as marketing and communications. Some departments call themselves that. You'll find variations on the theme kind of wherever you go. It is different and distinct from sales, which I think is another point that maybe a lot of people don't know. But so what we do in marketing and publicity, or marketing and communications, which is really what my team focuses on. We're a small team. We all wear a lot of different hats, and possibly myself more than any, because in the comics industry, we're also pretty inextricably linked with the direct market, especially. So yes. I do a lot of efforts specifically with the direct market. I work with someone on my team who's a marketing person focused on the direct market, especially. We work very closely with our distributor, Penguin Random House, and also Diamond and others. We focus a lot on things like our catalog, solicitations, getting the word out to our reps and therefore to retailers and to retailers directly about what's coming up. Our monthly catalog previews of books and comics, promotional items, other things for comic shops to help them get excited and spread the word about our comics and books. That might be bookmarks, posters, all those kinds of things that you see that we distribute to retailers. That's just one very small slice of it. Publicity is a huge part of what we do, as I said. So that includes working with folks like you guys, sending out review copies, making sure that all of our comics and books, every single issue, every single figure, also product like that, every book gets sent out to reviewers, to press members, to influencers that we work with. Sending out announcements, of course, of things in the first place, other news, interviews, placing preview pages, getting all that stuff out there to spread the word about books, which I think really, if you want to sum it up, that is largely what we do. It's our job to put the word out about the brand, about Dark Horse as a whole, and all the cool things that we do, and work with creators, work with licensors, work with partners, from publicity to the direct market to events like conventions, advertising, social media, email marketing, and more, just to get the word out about everybody's exciting new project that they themselves love. And we want to support the creators in what they do.
So how long have you been there?
Coming up on about 8 years, I want to say, at Dark Horse.
Okay. Were you a fan of comics? Do you have to be a fan of comics to work at Dark Horse Comics?
It definitely helps. It is like everybody we work with has a different set of interests, but I think we're all united in that we love some element of what we work with, right? If you don't care about any pop culture at all, if you don't like comics, if you don't like books, if you don't like video games or any of the stuff that we work with, it might not be as interesting to you. It might not be the best fit, but I love comics. I love video games. I like all these different kinds of things. And we, on my team, I know we have people who kind of have, of course, varied tastes. A lot of us like horror. Of course, Dark Horse publishes a lot of horror. We have a lot of manga fans, manga readers. We have a lot of sci-fi fantasy readers, romantasy, you name it. But yes, I think it definitely helps. You should have some sort of interest and knowledge of pop culture to really thrive in a job like this.
So I have been a huge fan of Dark Horse for decades, and it's really interesting to see just the growth of Dark Horse just get bigger and bigger with the different IPs and licenses, and the return of some of the creators. Like I remember when Eric Powell took the Goon to go do his own thing at Albatross, and then he kind of was like, it was a good fit at Dark Horse. So it's a lot, because it is really difficult to publish your own book. It's not as easy as some people. Well, some people luck out and they make it look easy, but it isn't as easy as you would think, especially with all the changes happening constantly. And here in the last, I know here in the last 6 months, there have been just so many changes in printing and distributing and, oh my gosh, everything else that's going on in the world and how it affects publishing. So it's almost like you got to roll with the punches sometimes.
Yeah.
And completely unexpected. My I was reached out to many years ago when I used to review manga for a magazine by Jack Cohen, who used to work at Dark Horse, and she was asking if I would be interested in reviewing this one manga that was huge in Japan but wasn't really popular here, and that was Berserk. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love the anime, so absolutely. And it's amazing how it's kind of come full circle to like how that became the very first, you went from the Tonkabon to these beautiful deluxe editions. And that has been such a huge, huge hit for Dark Horse. And it makes me very happy that all these people are now interested in this, what once was obscure manga in Japan. And now it's like, it's almost like a household name. If you're a manga collector and reader, it's like you have to have the Berserk the deluxe editions back there.
Yeah.
And how does that come about? How do decisions like that get made when it comes to a hardcover per se? Like, I know it's and we can talk about the hardcovers when it's like a creator owned, but whenever it's a manga, you gotta go through like different hurdles and jump over some things too.
Well, it's crazy how quickly and widespread that has now become. I do not say this as hyperbole. Like, this is just a fact. Dark Horse was the first to do those hardcover deluxe edition manga with Berserk. And that actually happened. It was something that we had been working on for quite a long time. What I think people may not understand is there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes with licensed works on the business side. And so things can take a long time. It's not that we're not working on them. It just takes longer. Dark Horse doesn't own these things outright. Of course, we license them from the Japanese publisher in this case. So that was something that we've been working on and developing for some time. It happened to come out, the first volume of Berserk Deluxe, right before the pandemic, basically. And that timing ended up being good because, of course, during the pandemic, we saw that surge in manga readership. And so I think that may have helped. I think it would have caught on regardless. Clearly, collectors were very, very happy to get that like nice, big, oversized deluxe hardcover treatment. We started with Berserk because Berserk does have such a strong, dedicated fan base. And we knew that those fans were hungry for more and something nice and something collectible. And that is what we were able to work out with. Again, everything is done in close partnership with a licensor. We do nothing without their review and approval. So that was something that was decided upon, and they liked the treatment. They liked the look and feel of it. And so happily that came together, and we've been able to continue with it and keep it in print. It's a lot of books printed, a lot of books. And every single volume is kept in print, yes, as well as the little Tonkabon sized paperbacks. People still like those too and are obviously collecting them as well. So that Berserk Deluxe, the success of it, proved that was a viable option, that collectors would come out for that. And obviously now other publishers are doing the same and giving deluxe treatment to manga. Um, it's hard to say, like, to really boil it down to this is always the case. It's not always the case for all things across different types of books. But for manga, sticking with the manga example, Berserk is a good example, and the other deluxe manga editions that we've done so far, I think, are evidence of this. We mostly so far have focused on classic series that are perhaps longer running series with a lot of volumes, enough to collect. A deluxe edition for Dark Horse is like a Dark Horse Library edition in that it collects several volumes in one. So several of the single individual Tonkabon size volumes, right, of Berserk, it's usually 3 approximately per deluxe edition, because that gives you the nice, like, thick spine width and lends itself well, I would say, to that format. Blade of the Immortal and Hellsing were the other 2 first manga series we did in the format. And those are classic series, have been around for a while and have good, big, strong followings. And they were also some of the ones that, again, we could work with a licensor, and the licensor was amenable to us doing that. So again, it's a partnership thing with that. We can't just decide we're going to do this thing. If they don't want us to do that, then we don't do that and we change. Trigun and Trigun Maximum were also, obviously those were in the works for so long. I got to tell you, the pandemic threw everything off. Carl Horn, the manga editor extraordinaire from Dark Horse, if you don't know him, look him up. He's amazing. He really gets the credit for all of this. He helped develop all of these deluxe edition manga. Carl and I were talking about Trigun before the pandemic hit. We wanted to time new releases with the new anime that was coming, and we were working with the anime studio as well. But the pandemic threw everything off. As you might recall, like, the direct market shut down for a little while, printing, shipping, everything ground to a halt for a while. So yes, everything was quite delayed. And then, like I said, all of these things are licensed, and also in this case, the creator, has a say as well. And so it was decided that he wanted to redo the covers, and Naito is directly involved in the covers. He ended up helping with the design and selecting the colors and all that went into the final treatment. But that had to go through a lot of rounds as well. And because we had that long stretched out time period, a lot of changes occurred during that time. But we knew fans were hungry for that too. So
I remember people were getting worried, like, oh no, it's in the catalog. Oh no, it's canceled. And it happens in publishing a lot right now. I think people are made aware that there is a catalog, and when something gets taken out of the catalog, they start panicking, and they're like, wait, what's going to happen? Does it mean that they're not going to do it? So there was a little bit of a delay with that, because I remember, initially the catalog had the yellow covers of Trigun, I think, and that's when people noticed that when they were pulled, they were like, are they not going to do it? But I just remember,
unfortunately, with things like that, we simply can't say anything until we have the final resolution and the permission to say something. I mean, if you want to think about it in a slightly different way, I mean, imagine it's like a Netflix production. Do you think that Netflix is going to let you talk about something before it's final and approved?
Right.
No. So we try to be forthcoming and transparent as much as we can. But again, I think something that people really, I know, I get it, but like, if at all possible to keep this in mind, just know that there are a lot of cooks in that kitchen, and a lot of people something needs to go through for approvals before it is approved. And we can share information publicly. If we do so beforehand, it's going to be one of those things where, this thing is coming. Oh, just kidding. Oh, this is the release date. Oh, never mind. You don't want that forward and back over and over again.
Which has happened in publishing before, not just Dark Horse, but I mean, even Marvel and DC have done something very similar. And it's because of that, right? It's like, oh no, we can't. And now I think nowadays, because of the way PRH needs books in the catalog, I think it's twice a year, right? Instead of like
there are 3 spans basically in the book market. Yeah. But books do work differently. They are solicited differently. There is still the direct market solicitation for us with PRH specifically. I'm sure this varies from publisher to publisher and different distributors too. But for Dark Horse, we do have to solicit comics earlier than we used to do with Diamond. I know sometimes people have been a little confused by that. Like, why are you telling me about this so early? Well, we have to.
Yeah.
We have to put it in that catalog. It has to go be available for pre-order, primarily for retailers for a certain amount of time. So they have time to collect pre-orders and get those in FOC for those who know what that means. And it follows for the successive issues. People want to know, understandably, about how well issue 1 did before they order issue number 2 for their store. So that's what FOC is supposed to help do. For books, we need to solicit. The goal is about 9 months early with Penguin Random House. And again, that is primarily so that there's enough time for it to get into their system, feed out to all the book buyers in the world. So all the people who buy for stores, who buy for Barnes and Noble, who buy for even Walmart and Target, who buy for libraries and schools, wherever they are, whoever they are ordering for, large or small, they need time. And in the book world, that is standard. And I come from a prose book background myself, and that's normal. Like getting Publishers Weekly and other things and advanced copies, like very far in advance, very, very far in advance. It just gives all of those retailers especially time to review and start placing their orders and looking ahead to those spans, which are only a few times a year. And then for fans to go and place their pre-orders, which also helps retailers and then publishers too. So
Yes.
it may seem like a long time, but 9 months is the goal usually for books for us with PRH.
I know it is very important to let people know to pre-order because of those things that you just stated. And that is something that I've always mentioned too, because of FOC, the final cutoff. I remember shooting you an email and your team an email when Kentaro Miura passed away. And because I mean the questions were coming in, right? Like whenever you show books and whenever you become the home of collected editions, a lot of people start asking you questions, and there was so much uncertainty when it came to those things that will they continue this? And a lot of that had to do. You all had to worry about, well, of course, Kentaro passing away was awful, but also this legacy and this story that was going to continue. So it was up to the license holder in Japan to actually make a statement that they were going to continue the story eventually. How did that affect you all in office when you're in the makings of these books that are coming out? And I think at that point, the 11th one, the 12th and 13th were solicited, or no, the 14th one was solicited, but it was like, oh no, how are we going to make a 15th one, with that being his last one? Like, how did that affect the team that was working on that?
It was a difficult time because many people at Dark Horse have been at Dark Horse for a very long time, especially actually a lot of our manga team. Michael Gambos, our director of international licensing, he has close relationships with all of these, like the creators, the mangaka themselves, the Japanese publishers. And it was difficult for those reasons too, personal connections. But for the books, it was more just a matter of, yes, we had to wait for the Japanese team to decide and to figure out, what they wanted to do. And in the end, obviously, they went forward with having Studio Gaga continue. And I think we also we knew that was probably going to happen. But again, like, we can't say anything. That would be disrespectful, right, first of all. And also, we frankly just can't. We're a business partner, and we have to also be respectful of that. And so we had to wait for them to kind of decide what they were going to do and move forward. And then again, it's all of this behind the scenes partnership work, business work. We have to, of course, sign a new agreement and get the rights to publish the volume 42 when it comes, and then on from there. And so That was a bit of a waiting game all around. However, when Hakusensha and the other partner publishers, when we were able to move forward with the announcement of Volume 42, Hakusensha was great to work with. We all partnered together, the American publisher, Dark Horse, and the French publisher, and the Japanese publisher. We all combined forces to do that global campaign, letting the world know that Volume 42 would continue. And it would be available from all of us in our usual licensed, translated, and localized editions. That's another thing about manga that I wish people would think about more. I think we're making progress. You know, it's fans are becoming more savvy, but there's a lot more to all of this than just a quick translation of something. It's a lot more work that goes into a volume of manga than that. And if you want a good modern translation, that will also take more time than just slapping it through Google Translate. So
thank God for that. Like, because
right.
I there's definitely that fear of AI translations and things like that just it's become kind of a thing. And yeah, so I'm glad that there's still people out there that know how important these are. And well, I mean, and you also have to make the license holder happy. You can't just throw a product out there that just overnight, right? Like, they have to, like you mentioned, have to be happy with the end product.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned something though about, people. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of just when people want something, they just assume you can do it, right? And I get it. I've been a fan too. It wasn't until I started doing this and working with publishers that I learned how difficult it can be. That it's not just, I want my manga in hardcover format. Like, because I see a lot of those kind of comments, like, why did Dark Horse go the softcover route with the Gunsmith Cats? Why couldn't it have been a deluxe edition? I've been waiting years for this. And it's one of those things that it's not as easy as you wanting it, because there's so many things, and I don't want to say obstacles, but there are different hurdles you got to go through. When it comes to these things,
there's certainly that element to it, and I understand too. You know, I'm a fan as well. I'm an avid reader of many things, and I've worked in books for a long time. It's interesting to me actually being more on the comic side, because clearly, you know, there is a very, very strong collector mentality in comics, and going from single issues to books more, you know. Once upon a time, comics were comics. They're floppy, they're cheap, cheap paper and all that. Books like collected graphic novels came a bit later, and then fully original graphic novels. No comics ever involved, no single issues. And Dark Horse does a lot of books specifically. It's been interesting to see comics people come to books and kind of discover these special deluxe treatment of books, and take that kind of mentality of like, I need to collect a matched set and apply it to books. I've worked in books for such a long time. I worked at Powell's Books, if folks are familiar with it, huge bookstore in Portland, Oregon, used and new. And I am very used to books being in whatever format they are. I'm happy to be able to get a copy of whatever that is, because sometimes books are hard to find. They may have gone out of print. They may have been at like 8 different publishers over the years. And so they're in all these different formats with different covers and different sizes and all sorts of things. And so having a match set to me was a bit more of like a luxury than a expectation. Now people are, I think, living in a really great time to be able to collect these matched sets of especially longer running volumes. What people may not realize is, but if you think about it, I think you'll understand, a long series with many volumes in it, the later volumes do not sell that well. The longer it goes on, especially the middle of the series, dips quite a bit. And yeah, it is very difficult for a publisher to keep that whole thing in print all the time, because the sales are not justifying printing more of those volumes that do not sell as many copies. The first volume absolutely will continue to do well. But say Lone Wolf and Cub, for example, the later volumes in that series honestly fell off a cliff. And it was very like, there's so much behind the scenes stuff. It would be difficult to get into in just even this format. But publishers, the way that publishing works is that we have to print and store books at a distributor. And from there, they go out to stores. That storage alone is exceptionally expensive. And they put strict limits on how much stock we can have sitting around in storage that isn't going out to stores. Most stores, you've been to a comic shop, they're usually smaller stores. They cannot order and stock every single volume of everything. If you go to a Barnes and Noble, they don't have a copy of every book ever made on the shelf. They have usually front list, what's new and what sells the best, because they know they can sell it. We come back to like FOC again here. That's why we're trying to get people to pre-order. We need shops to pre-order. If you want to get something and you expect it to be there when you arrive, you should pre-order it just to be sure, because a store cannot afford to stock everything ever. And so these orders help them understand what to have, and it helps us understand how much to print and how much we can move, because we are frankly not allowed to keep everything in stock indefinitely. If it's not selling, it can become a very expensive problem for everyone involved. So having these long sets, it's a bit of a challenge. And if you really love a longer series and you want to support it and see it stay in print, it really would be very helpful if you could encourage people to get those later volumes too, like get the whole set or get them consistently when they come out. That will help them stay in stock.
So I've talked to both Marvel and DC about this because it like I said, I came from a fan angle, and a lot of my viewers do the same thing. And something that gets brought up often, it's something that you mentioned here a little bit, is the possibility of having books in evergreen. But both of those publishers said the exact same thing. There's not, most publishers don't have a hardcover program for evergreen because of everything that you just mentioned. There's not an infinite amount of space in a warehouse. It costs money to sit there, and they take up a lot more room. And it's just impossible to do that, because we just did a reprint poll for Marvel, and we're doing one for DC for their Omnis. And that's a very common thing I see in the comments. Like, why can't publishers just keep this in print forever? And it's near impossible to do that. But I didn't understand that either until I started talking to publishers, and it makes complete sense. So everything that you just mentioned is exactly why it's impossible to keep books in evergreen.
I wish we could. If we didn't have to worry about storing all of those books forever, that would be nice. But it's not exclusive to comics. Like you said, it's not exclusive to any one publisher. It is the nature of the business. Big fancy hardcovers too. While we love them, I love big fancy books. I do.
I see some behind you.
Yes, there are some that are kind of evergreen. Those Hellboy library editions, those also remain in print because the collectors are there. But you think about it. You mentioned how popular Berserk has become. Those Berserk Deluxe editions and also the paperbacks continue to be our top sellers month over month over month over month. We're going to reach a point where everybody's got a Berserk, though, and it's
not their kids.
It is starting to taper, but like, are they going to buy more for their, yes, it will continue to sell, but it will slow down also. Like everything will reach that point. And it's difficult. We keep things going for as long as we can, but I think also anybody who uses social media, I think, is aware of this. We each live in a little bit of an echo chamber of our own making. And
don't say
when the
internet,
you and your friends, you love that anime, you love that book, that series. And so to you, it feels like everyone wants it and it must be so obvious. And we'll hear about it. Like, we see you, we read your comments, we read your emails, we're fans too. And we're also well aware of what is and isn't in print. And that could be for many reasons too. Again, like maybe the license has moved or something, but the reality is sometimes that not very many people did buy that or did order it. It did not do as well as some people may think because they love it so much.
Mhm.
And I know that's difficult to hear or think about sometimes as a big fan of something, but it does have to reach a certain point where, you know, it will sell enough that we're not losing vast amounts of money on it.
You, so I have noticed, and I want to see what you think. I want to hear your take, but I have noticed a huge just interest in these collected editions over the last, I would say, 7 to 10 years, as opposed to 10 years ago. And I noticed it because of the viewership that I got, because we're looking at a niche of a niche, right? You have comics that's already kind of a niche thing, and people have channels based on that, and comic book movies, those tend to do well. But then you have this little corner of collected editions, which I never thought would take off. And I just see the viewership and like people taking an interest more and more every year. And it just makes me so happy. So I'm wondering, from your perspective as a publisher in the 8 years you've been at Dark Horse, have you noticed a change too? Like people are asking, or I'm sorry, notice the changes in like spending money, of course. Are they buying the things they're asking for? Are they buying these big books? Are they buying the hardcovers? Are they buying these collected editions that, weren't around 10, 15 years ago?
Yes and no. The interest has definitely soared. And that's kind of what I mean by I've seen that collector mentality move to big, fancy collected editions. I absolutely think we see that. It depends, though, on the content still. Not
Okay.
every single deluxe book does very well. It depends on what it is and when it comes out too. So Dark Horse obviously does a lot of art books that are based on video games or other properties. If the art book, those take a long time to make. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes with those as well. If that doesn't come out at a time where people are still interested in the property, like maybe we're able to announce it at the same time as the game, but the game has now been out for a year by the time the book comes out, we find that usually does have an impact on sales. Sometimes with a very, very, very popular property, or say the God of War, 20th anniversary retrospective kind of a collection that we've announced. Sometimes those will still be big enough that collectors will want them regardless. But it's not a guaranteed success just because we've done something in a deluxe format. And we actually, I think we have to be careful. So when we're planning this, we're looking at something projected far ahead to come out whenever it's going to get scheduled. And then we're looking back at how, so say it's a beloved series like Berserk or something. If we're going to talk about doing a different edition now, we would have to look back at how did Berserk sell in these formats? How did it sell over time? Where are we at with these other formats that are still in print? There's a lot to consider. And so not everything will necessarily do that well as a deluxe edition. It won't really, like, it will reach that core audience, that group of fans who love it, and we hear you and we know that you really want it. But outside of those 500 people, and those kinds of deluxe books are honestly very expensive to produce and very expensive to store. And the more expensive something is, the less likely retailers are to just order it. They need to know, just like we need to know, that somebody on the other end is going to buy it. So just overall, it's going to be a smaller group. And I'll say one more thing about this. I think that's why you're seeing more projects come up on Kickstarter and other crowdfunding services.
I've noticed a lot of that in the last couple, especially these last couple of years.
We just launched our first one, and
the Star Wars.
That's also been like a really long time in the works. And there are things, our book designers, I can't even tell you, like, huge shout out to our design and production team. They are amazing. And they can make some absolutely stunningly gorgeous books with all kinds of bells and whistles. We've done some for Critical Role, for example, and The Legend of Zelda. Those books are expensive to produce, especially now with all the tariff craziness.
Mhm.
And they're expensive for anyone to buy, to collect, to store, to have in their shop. And so that is a very specialized market. And because of all those factors, like the smaller a print run is, I'm sure everybody's aware of this sort of thing now, the more expensive each individual unit is to make. And if we know that we're only probably going to sell about 250 copies of that, that means each of those 250 copies costs a lot more to produce. And so Kickstarter and crowdfunding is really helpful because that way you're able to go all out. I want to add dice. I want to add like an actual playmat. I want to add gold, like actual gold on the, you can do those things if you have the support to make it happen. And so you're not only helping to raise funds to offset those costs, but you're probably also, if you're doing it right, getting the word out enough so that more people are interested, they're backing it, which means they're buying it, which means you can increase the print run and everybody wins.
I noticed that I think it was Boom, and then the biggest ones, of course, have been like the Transformers and GI Joe from, which that one really took me by surprise that they were doing that as a Kickstarter. But I mean, honestly, these crowdfunded places have kind of changed the way, like you said, people are now printing books. And do you see that happening more with Dark Horse books? Like, if people like for not, I don't know, Star Wars is pretty big, so I don't know of a title that I can think of, but do you all think that that's something that if this is successful, that you'll be seeing Dark Horse do a lot more, taking it to the crowdfunding?
Yes, but like to clarify for us at least, it will be for these kinds of extremely special editions. It's not going to replace us doing a library edition.
Mhm.
That's not. It's not about like getting money out of people. It's about being able to actually produce these extremely fancy editions that we really would not be able to do otherwise due to the factors I just said. If you want something that is truly that special and unique and exclusive, crowdfunding is kind of the way to do it. If we were a very niche boutique sort of art book publisher, those exist.
Yeah.
But we're not. We have to kind of do things at a more mass production level. So this is a way to do something that is more niche like that in a way that is feasible.
Now, I wanted to come back to something like this, because this, speaking of niche and very pretty and very nice and very limited, was one of my favorite releases. This is the limited edition of the Usagi Yojimbo Saga Volume 1. What you all did with this was very unique. You all did a limited print run, and then there was a second print run of Volume 1. But they were limited. I believe in the end, I think 1,800 copies of the hardcover, and then everything else went in softcover format. Um, and one of the questions that I get often, and I would get my badge taken away if I didn't ask, is there a possibility of those ever getting reprinted without being limited as hardcovers? The Usagi Yojimbo Saga.
That would really actually be up to the Dogu team. That is Stan Sakai's own company we work with, and they basically have an imprint at Dark Horse. That's another example of a decision we do not make alone. We don't tell Stan and his team that we're going to do that. Similar, we get a lot of questions about things like ElfQuest, for example. We work very closely with those teams, and it would be a group decision. Is it the format that the creators or licensors want to do? Or do they have something else in mind? And has it been long enough? We don't want to oversaturate if those are still in print and available on the shelves at places. With this particular one, the hardcovers, I don't think that is something that is being looked at right now. And the reason why the limited ones are limited is because of that signed tip-in. Stan can only do so many of those.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I can't imagine.
So we are doing new ones when there's a new release. That is something that Dogu wants. And so we have the limited edition as part of that release, but
Yeah.
it's always going to be limited to about that same number of copies because that is what Stan can sign.
And one of the things that happened, this is another case of a license going somewhere else. So at one point, Stan took it to IDW, and they were redoing the entire series in color format. Is that something that you all are going to look at, like collecting those in addition?
It's possible. Again, that would be something to work out with Dogu and, make sure that we get the rights to that.
Mm,
There are new colored editions of Usagi titles coming out now. Emi Fuji has been coloring a lot of Stan's work lately. There's the Space Usagi series,
yeah.
and we're doing new editions of, look at my shelf, Chibi Usagi as well. So yeah, more Usagi continues to roll out. Again, this is all done in partnership with Dogu themselves, though.
Yeah.
So
So how does that work when it comes to a creator? Like let's say like Bendis. Bendis has Jinx World, and Jinx World has been a part of Marvel Comics, and then it went over to Image, and then it's at Dark Horse now. So how 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 did that work? Is that something that Bendis approached like, hey, I want to kind of get my books printed with you guys because I love what everything that you do? Or is it something that you all approached Bendis about at one point?
it can go both ways. Brian Michael Bendis is a little bit of a case unto his own. He's amazing and he loves Dark Horse, and so he and Mike Richardson have been talking for a long time. Bendis, in this case, owns Jinx World, and so he owns that suite of titles. And so once he had full rights to those things and was, I think, probably no longer under some sort of, it is common now for certain creators to have like exclusivity contracts with
Mhm.
certain publishers. So once he was not bound by those sorts of things, yeah, him coming to Dark Horse was a big, very, very happy, mutually celebrated thing. He lives here in the Portland area where Dark Horse is based.
Yeah.
Michael Avon Oming also lives here, one of his creative partners. A lot of comics folks here in the Portland area. And so it's just been something that we have this whole interview with him actually that I did when he came to Dark Horse several years ago, where he talks about that. You can still find it on our YouTube channel, and I'm sure I'll have my social team share it again if you want. But
Absolutely. I'll
um,
put it in the link of this description of the video.
yeah, yeah. So he was super excited about it, and it is a great team up. It's a great fit. All that Jinx World stuff is very much in the wheelhouse of what Dark Horse, I think, is best known for and good at publishing. Like a lot of genre, like crime fiction, adventure, like all that kind of dark action stuff. So it's been a great partnership so far. We're continuing to have more stuff come out all the time. And yeah, that was Bendis' decision and a partnership that formed between him and Dark Horse in that case.
So this is something that I've seen asked of me, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, which I think you said earlier. But when Mark Miller came on and did Dark Horse books, his books were coming out in trade paperback, and then we got library editions. And one of the things that I've been asked is when are we going to get like the Jinx World hardcovers of Powers or any of the other works that Bendis did? And is that decision something that is a creator decision, or is it in partnership with Dark Horse, or both of you? Like, who pitches the idea to who, I guess, and or is it just case by case?
It is kind of like basically case by case. I mean, it's something that we all always think about, especially now. Like we know library editions, people know them now, they like them. It is like the end goal for something that is done well enough that we think it will actually, like, people will want it
Yeah. Okay.
in
Right.
that format. But yeah, with the Jinx World stuff specifically, it would definitely be a group decision. Like, is this something that the creator wants to do as well? You also have to think about, again, I've mentioned, things may still be available if we still have a lot of the paperbacks or omnibuses or whatever format it might be. If those are still available and in print, it's not really time yet to do another edition. necessarily. Some things we keep in print simultaneously. Berserk is an example, but we can't do that for all series. Most series are not as popular as Berserk. They would not sell in both of those editions all the time. Not the way Berserk does. So you have to keep those things in mind. I know that might not be like the most fun thing to think about as a fan or as a creator, but there is that reality that if something is really kind of tapering off in sales in this format, it's not going to look good when we have to cost it out and say, should we do a hardcover? It might be something that we do, and I'm not talking about anything specific here, just kind of an in general thing. If we're looking at an anniversary coming up, that might be a good time where we'd be like, oh, we could do a new collected edition celebrating the anniversary of this thing. We've done new editions like the big gigantic compendium, of Harrow County, for example.
Yeah, that is a perfect example I was going to segue into, because for years I've been hearing, Omar, when are we going to get Harrow County Library Edition volumes 2? I think it's 2 and 3 that are impossible to find back in print. And I know I've emailed you about it. And then this came out, right? So how was that process, instead of saying, okay, let's reprint these library editions, and then just say, no, let's do a big all-in-one format? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, those library editions in particular, anybody who's seen me, heard me on Dark Horse streams or anything, knows I love Harrow County. It's one of my all-time favorites.
It's a great series.
It's so good. And the time those library editions were coming out, I was working at Dark Horse. I think my role was more like, I think I was still primarily like social media manager at the time. So I don't really have a say in any of this, but I would just pass information along, like to our print team, be like, hey, like people are really asking about this a lot, look at it. Yeah. So I'll just, for the record, I fought for y'all. Okay. I loved that series.
I remember our emails back and forth about that.
Yeah. It was unfortunately one of those cases where volume 1 sold really well.
Yeah.
And that was it. The other ones didn't sell as well. And I think, it was like the timing, maybe the price point. This was before the big, it was before the pandemic. It was before the big manga boom. It was before the deluxe edition manga. And yeah, our library editions were getting pretty popular. Thanks, Hellboy was kind of the first of those. But I just think it hadn't caught on enough yet in enough ways for it to sell in a way that would have justified continued reprintings. And so unfortunately, those middle volumes, as with a lot of series, as I was saying before, those dipped enough that despite me haranguing them constantly, the team just wasn't able to justify the cost of keeping those in print, unfortunately. And I know. But I think that was also with a mind to, as you might have noticed, we often will do, well, okay, so these are expensive and they're harder for shops to buy and they're harder for many people to buy versus a few. So we'll go to, and this is prose books too, we'll go from a big, fancy, expensive hardcover to a paperback omnibus that is value priced or whatever. And it's the same thing collected, but in a paperback that's cheaper. Not necessarily less well made, just cheaper, not hardcover. So I think that was, in people's minds. Again, I wasn't part of the committee at the time. Don't come at me. But it went to the omnibus format, and that has done well. Those usually do sell better because they are cheaper, and therefore, again, schools can buy them, libraries can buy them, people can buy them in larger quantities. That does tend to bear out.
To clarify something really, really quick for people watching, when Cara says omnibus format, she's not talking about the big, thick hardcover.
Yeah, no, that's like what Marvel calls their big hardcover.
Yeah, Marvel and DC call. So I know a lot of my viewers are like, "Oh, those aren't cheap." She's talking about the softcover formats. I wish I had one handy with me, and of course, I've given them all away. I think it's a trade. It's a trim size of a trade paperback, but they're thicker and a lot more affordable. So she is power. They've done some with Powers, BPRD, and yes, Harrow County. Because at that time, you were focusing on those.
Yeah, omnibus, that's just a term that means collection, basically. It could be any size. For us, it's not necessarily one standard size. A library edition is a standard size. But an omnibus is just a bigger collection usually, and for us, it's a paperback. Blade of the Immortal also has omnibuses. They're a bit larger trim size than, say, like other smaller tankobon-sized omnibuses or non-manga omnibuses. So yeah, for us, it's a paperback format, just a big collection. And yeah, so because it's quote value priced, they do usually do better. Like it's a more mass marketable thing. And if the goal is to just get Harrow County to more readers, that has done well. But knowing that people like these big fancy collections, both Hellboy and I have it behind me here, Hellboy and Harrow County have gotten that big, gigantic, like one volume treatment. And that is because we knew the collectors were there and they wanted something big and nice and special. And so that was another version that we tried. And sometimes publishers try things and we see how they go.
So you know that BPRD hardcovers are high in demand, and Plague of Frogs would be a huge hardcover, and then of course the Hell on Earth. But
I can tell you something about that, and I think I've said this before at other times, but basically Mike Mignola himself wants Hellboy to be special, and it gets the libraries.
Okay. And the big edition, the big monster bus.
Yeah, yeah, the big boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Hellboy, library editions, BPRD, it was kind of like, if you know prose books, for example, something comes out in a nice hardcover first, and then it goes paperback, and then it might go to mass market. Kind of like that for all of the Mignola, like the main Mignola series, Hellboy and the BPRD. We did those hardcovers first and then paperback. So that was the format for a long time, and the hardcovers were not meant to stay in print. Like Mike also didn't want them to stay in print. We wanted to go to paperback with those. That being said, I think we're at the point now, and Hellboy has continued. I don't know, for some reason people seem to have dropped off and missed the news sometimes, but Hellboy has continued all this time. After Hellboy in Hell, we've had Hellboy in the BPRD, and there's so much time, to explore.
Young Hellboy. Yeah.
So there's a lot more that has come out, and Mike likes to tell things in kind of short stories. We'll have a one shot, we'll have a two shot, we'll have a two-parter, but also three-parter, and they're combined into one graphic novel later. So he likes to do a lot of those, and so you can, we will continue to collect those, and we will continue to help make it easier to understand. We're working on a new kind of updated, here's what's available, what's collected where.
Okay.
So we're working on resources like that. It's just there's a lot. There's a lot.
There's a lot in the Hellboy universe, absolutely. Yeah. And I've done reading orders. I've done a reading order of Hellboy and BPRD on my channel a couple of years ago to kind of help people collect the books and how they're read. But much like you said, Mike likes to go back to, this is taking place in the past. This happens right before the Hell on Earth storyline, and it's like, now you're throwing in a couple of other stories and where it fits into chronological order. It is a wonderful universe, but yeah. So what you're saying, maybe not 100% chance of BPRD ever coming out in a huge format, but
I don't know about the huge format. Yeah, I can't say with certainty right now. But I mean, all of these books, this series is important. We know that people are still reading it. We know that we want it to all be available to people. So I'm sure there will be more to come, but it will be a group decision. As Mike principally who owns all of this, we always work very closely with Mike Mignola. But because these things have been going on for a long time, there have been some new additions along the way, like those Hellboy Essentials collections, things like that. So I can't pre-announce an announcement, but when we have new formats, new additions, definitely look to our news for all that.
What's your favorite project you've worked on?
Oh man,
favorite thing you've done at Dark Horse?
I mean, there's the things that I love to read, but the things that I love to work on too. I've had a lot of fun working on Kelly Sue DeConnick's new series, FML.
Okay.
That comic series is ongoing right now. It's our first creator-owned comic series with Kelly Sue and David Lopez. So if you liked Captain Marvel, same team. But Kelly Sue is also local in the Portland area, and the whole series is very fun, very like tongue-in-cheek. It's almost kind of, it's like set almost in an alternative Portland, but you don't need to worry about that if you're not from here. It still has mass appeal. Kelly Sue's writing is so perfect, and the art is such a great match for that series. It's got a very like DIY feel. The single issues have bonus content that's only available in the singles. It will not be collected in the trade. It has a very like zine DIY kind of thing, like it's like essays and how to make your own comic and all kinds of stuff in the back matter. So the marketing has likewise been kind of guerrilla, like hitting up a lot of blogs and podcasts and like doing puzzles through her newsletter. There's before we even launched, she set up a fake band website. There's a band in the comic, and so she had like teased out this band in her newsletter, and you could go there and it was like, is this a real band? I don't know. What is it? And so you had to solve the puzzles, and she's still doing stuff like that in her newsletter. There's a text line you can sign up for, and she'll send you like little updates from that text line. I presented on the Penguin Random House Client Summit virtual thing recently, and I talked about this on there too. So that's been really fun because it's different and creative.
And it's your favorite thing you've worked on so far?
It's a recent one that has been a lot of fun. We've done a lot of other really fun stuff for Harrow County, for example. Interviewing Tyler Crook in his studio is really cool. Interviewing Bendis when he came to Dark Horse. I like things like that where I really get to dive in deep and talk with the creators. We work very closely with the creators all the time, but really getting to take a deep dive and spend more time with the person and talking about their series and getting to know their process. I think that's some of the best parts of our jobs.
I know we're about to wrap up, but how far in advance do you all plan ahead for? And since we're just talking about collected editions, I know like for Marvel and DC, for the catalog, like they have to have it all the way to January of 2026. But there are other things coming later in 2026 that they're super excited about that no announcements have been made. How far in advance do you all know, whether it's an anniversary of something or you're starting to work on perhaps getting a new license for a manga or trying to do another deluxe? Because those deluxe editions, like you said, have been amazing.
Quite far in terms of scheduling things. We are, like, as a publisher, you are constantly working at all ends of the spectrum, looking back at backlist and looking forward and what's coming out now. So every single week, our publishing team meets and we look at new projects or revisiting projects and all kinds of, just new materials from editors, proposals. We look at that stuff every single week on an ongoing basis. And our schedule, however, I mean, you can look at darkhorse.com right now and see how much we have coming out every week. And you can see that far ahead, as far as solicitations have gone out anyway. So yeah, we're well beyond 9 months when it comes to planning things. We have, our schedule goes out, at least, I would say 2 years maybe. And so as new projects come in, we have to get those scheduled. And so we have to figure out, like, they have to be worked into that overall ongoing publishing schedule of both single issues, which are monthly, and books, which are planned for. Yes, we might be looking at an anniversary. There might be a game coming out, or, it's say for new manga, it's when the editor can work on it, can get it done, how much time we think we're going to need for approvals. Because again, there's a huge process involved in that behind the scenes. So yeah, there's a lot of care and consideration into those schedules. And it might feel on the outside that things take a very long time to come out, but you have to think about the fact that we have all of these things ongoing at any given time.
Oh yeah. And then they can sneak in something and you're like, oh, we're going to have to move something around in the schedule to make room for this. It's very exciting. I know it's work for you all, but it's absolutely exciting to see all these new things that are coming out and the possibilities of other books and perhaps reprints coming out someday in some kind of format. Now, I know we have planets, I think is how I've always
Planetests, yeah.
coming out in deluxe format. Without going into detail, is there any other plans for more manga and deluxe edition from Dark Horse?
Yes, we will keep bringing them out, and it will depend on a lot of factors. Again, I think something that may help for people to keep in mind is just Dark Horse does about half and half things that are creator owned and licensed, and all manga at Dark Horse is licensed. And so we're working with a variety of different publishers in Japan on each of these things. So it can take a while, and it is something done in partnership. So we have to talk with them and work with them and make sure, we settle on an edition that they want to do as well. And the Planetest series is something that Carl Horn especially has worked very hard on developing, to give it a very unique and tied into the theme of the books themselves feel.
Oh.
So each one, he's given some interviews and quotes, and this is all in the descriptions on our website, but those are designed to really look like, the view from space. That is such an essential part of those stories. So we are doing some really cool things with those deluxe editions, making them different and unique, not just always, going to be that flat black or flat red or something.
I like the flat black. I think that's awesome.
I know some people do.
It's very classy. So Cara, thank you so much for joining me today and for enlightening us with some of the behind the scenes at Dark Horse and how things are decided. And it's not as easy as fans like myself are like, why isn't this in hardcover? Why doesn't this stay in print? And also for explaining a lot of the things that you all do, because you all wear a lot of hats, especially in your group. So thank you so much. People can follow you on Dark Horse, right? Like Dark Horse has a social media on Facebook, Twitter.
We are at Dark Horse Comics on all of the socials. We're on TikTok now as well, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, and then Blue Sky. It's darkhorse.com, the way that Blue Sky does usernames.
Yeah, I've been tagged at Dark Horse challenged me to do my top 10 favorite Dark Horse collected editions. And
yes.
I was like, all right, game on, baby. Game on. We're going to do this.
How can you choose? You're going to have to do a top 10 of top 10s.
It's difficult because so much has come out in the last 7 years alone that, you asked me 10 years ago, I got it. Now it's like, I got to put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah.
But seriously, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and everyone here. And everybody go and check out Dark Horse's website for all the things that are coming out. And
so much news.
Look at this channel for overviews of wonderful Dark Horse comics and books and collected editions, library, omnis, whatever format they're in. But stay healthy and safe, everyone. And again, thank you to Cara for joining us.